As the oldest operating airport in the United States, it is expected that misconceptions, and even misguidedness will develop over time. This training has been developed to provide the information to operate safely and proficiently in the Pearson Part 93 Special Flight Rules area. Pearson Field Airport is the only airport in the United States that operates totally within the boundaries of a National Historic Reserve. It offers a full-service FBO and aero maintenance that operates a very active flight school, an educational center, aviation museum, Civil Air Patrol, EAA, and other service organizations, and passionate aircraft owners that all call Pearson home. Located only 3.24 nautical miles from the award-winning Portland International Airport, Pearson has developed a partnership between stakeholders to ensure safe and proficient operations in a complex airspace. This relationship was codified, becoming what is known as the Pearson Field Part 93 SFRA. It is important to make some distinctions and clarifications. Pearson Airfield is a non-towered airport managed by the City of Vancouver. The airspace is defined and regulated through the federal government. This distinction is crucial in understanding where to find pertinent information and how to operate in this non-towered airspace. Remember, you, as the pilot in command, are the final authority to the safety of your flight, as well as the responsible party for your actions. In this training, we will cover the following topics: Part 93 SFRA, how to find pre-flight information, and best practices for operations in the SFRA. This training is available for Wings credits. The FAA Safety Team Wings Proficiency Program helps to ensure you stay a proficient pilot. When you train with the CFI, request Wings credits. And remember, phases of Wings also serve as flight reviews. The first indication that Pearson has a unique airspace is located on the Seattle sectional. Above Lake Vancouver symbology, just north of Pearson, is a call-out box stating Pearson Field Part 93 Contact Advisory 119.0. As a bare minimum, you should be talking to Pearson Advisory, who are the Portland Tower controllers. Several inches to the northwest, there is another call-out box that is a special notice, and pilots should read the notes located in the Pacific Ocean for more details. This is an abbreviated reading of the SFRA. But what is Part 93? In the Code of Federal Regulations, Title 14, Aeronautics and Space, Volume 2, Part 93, Special Air Traffic Rules. Subpart N, Pearson Field, Vancouver, Washington, Airport Traffic Rules, 93.161 through 93.163. The Pearson airspace is defined and the rules of operations are expressed. Unless authorized by ATC, no person may operate an aircraft within the airspace described in Section 93.162 or taxi onto the runway at Pearson Field unless 1. That person establishes two-way radio communications with Pearson Advisory on the Common Traffic Advisory frequency for the purpose of receiving air traffic advisories and continues to monitor the frequency at all times while operating within the specified airspace. 2. That person has obtained the Pearson Field weather prior to establishing two-way communications with Pearson Advisory. Notwithstanding the provisions of the paragraph A of this section, if two-way radio communication failure occurs in flight, a person may operate an aircraft within the airspace described in 93.162 and land if weather conditions are at or above basic VFR weather minimums. If two-way radio communication failure occurs while in flight under IFR, the pilot must comply with Section 91.185. C. Unless otherwise authorized by ATC, persons operated an aircraft within the airspace described in Section 93.162 must 1. When operating over the runway or extended runway centerline of Pearson Field runway 8 or 26, Maintain an altitude at or below 700 feet above mean sea level. 2. Remain outside Portland Class C airspace. 3. Make a right traffic pattern when operating to or from Pearson Field runway 26. In December 2012, an effort to further improve the safety of operations in airspace shared by Pearson Field and Portland International, a work group of subject matter experts was convened to conduct a risk analysis of existing hazards that are inherent to the close proximity of the two airfields. The outcome became the Part 93 Special Flight Rules area and was designed to mitigate mid-air collisions, wake turbulence, and TCAS-RAs, go-arounds for commercial operators. Besides the Code of Federal Regulations, there are two other documents that are important for pilots operating in the SFRA and can be easily overlooked because it deals with airspace and not the airport. Located in the back of the Northwest Chart Supplement is the Special Notice section for the Pearson Field SFRA. Besides an abbreviated version of the Part 93 language, there are also more detailed explanations of arrival procedures that will be covered in more detail later. Please note that the Airport Directory section of the Chart Supplement for Vancouver, Washington, the Pearson Field entry states the minimum of contacting Pearson Advisory and staying at or below 700 feet MSL during runway operations to reduce wake turbulence and TCAS-RAs. The last document is the Letter to Airmen, which explains Part 93 operations and gives expanded guidance. Please note that electronic flight bags, like ForeFlight and FlyQ, do not pull the Letter to Airmen and can often be missed in current pre-flight planning. To access the LTA, you must go to the FAA NOTAM search, but be advised the Department of Defense NOTAM search excludes the LTA as well. It cannot be stressed enough that Pearson is a non-towered airport, or what can be described as uncontrolled airspace. Pearson Advisory does not control the flow of traffic, and once communication has been established, pilots should make standard position reports as stated in the AIM and other FAA-approved documents. It is important to remember that our Part 93 airspace was designed to reduce the possibility of wake turbulence encounters and reduce TCAS-RAs, as Pearson aircraft may be at risk of wake turbulence from PDX arrivals from 10 left and from departures from 28 left and right. The ILS of runway 10 left is directly over the runway 8 threshold at Pearson Field. All standard instrument departures out of PDX runway 28 left or right fly over the Columbia River and within 2,500 feet horizontally of the Pearson runway 8 threshold. Wake remnants from PDX runways 28 left and 28 right departing aircraft with an abnormally slow climb may affect Pearson aircraft. The Aeronautical Information Manual, Chapter 7, Section 3, has valuable information regarding wake behavior and wake avoidance, and there will also be a companion wings training on wake turbulence in the future. Pilots operating in the Pearson airspace should be aware of PDX traffic and follow best practices laid out in this training and approved FAA resources. Lastly, the Pearson Field Part 93 airspace is also Class E from the surface to 1,100 feet, where Class Charlie begins. Class E visibility and cloud clearances are required for legal operations. One note, special VFR is not explicitly prohibited and may be requested. Before taking the active runway, pilots should receive the latest Pearson weather on ASOS 135.125 before contacting Pearson Advisory on CTAF 119.0. Pilots should, when possible, follow the flow of PDX traffic. Before taking the runway, contact Pearson Advisory with a standard radio phraseology. Pearson Advisory, type aircraft and call sign, state that you have the minute weather for Pearson, the departing runway, and direction of flight.
And good afternoon, Pearson Advisory, Skyhawk 545 Delta Sierra with a minute departing runway 8 to the north.
Calling Pearson Advisory, man outside Charlie airspace, customer interior on Portland arriving from the west.
Copy Advisory 5 Delta Sierra.
Pilots can expect Pearson Advisory to issue traffic and wake turbulence advisories on PDX traffic and instructions to remain outside the Portland Class Charlie airspace. Pilots can also expect to be advised of the current direction of the PDX flow and should, when safe, operate in the same direction as the PDX traffic. IFR clearances are also obtained from Pearson Advisory. Some special notes. For departures to the south, the preferred method is for a midfield crossing over PDX. To request, just add to your initial call-up.
Pearson Advisory, Piper 300 Papa Alpha with the minute for midfield transition Aurora.
Piper 300 Papa Alpha. Pearson Advisory, squawk 0222. You can plan a midfield crossing, and once you're airborne, contact Portland Tower on 123.77. Caution wake turbulence for departures off Portland.
Pearson Advisory will issue a clearance with a transponder code and issue a frequency for the tower, as well as the standard advisory for the direction of PDX flow, wake turbulence, and to remain clear of the Charlie. Pilots will make position reports using 119.0 until leaving the pattern before contacting Portland Tower.
And Pearson area traffic 5 Delta Sierra, downwind departure for midfield, last call, Pearson traffic.
For runway 26, depart on the downwind, and for runway 8 on the upwind.
Portland Tower 5 Delta Sierra.
Pearson 545 Delta Sierra, Portland Tower ident, Portland altimeter 3015, stay altitude.
Departures to the east, the preferred method is the north bank transition, which follows the north bank of the Columbia River.
November 713 November Victor, Pearson Advisory, go ahead.
Yes, 73 November Victor requests a north bank transition to Hood River.
November 3 November Victor, squawk 4710. Once clear Pearson traffic, contact Portland Tower on 123.77.
Pearson Advisory will issue a clearance with a transponder code and instructions to contact the tower after the last position report, as well as the standard advisories for the direction of PDX flow, wake turbulence, and to remain clear of the Charlie. These procedures can be used in reverse for arrivals, which will be discussed later. Remember the following for departures. Obtain weather and contact Pearson Advisory on 119.0. Sometimes the controllers cannot immediately respond. Be patient and try again. It is extremely important to note that there are no procedures for radio failures on the ground, and radio contact must be made before departure. There are clear guidances for Part 93 for the event of radio failures in flight to be discussed during the arrival section. If your aircraft does not have two-way radio communication, call the tower via a phone for advisement. When able, depart with a flow of PDX. This can be a controversial topic, but there are two important factors. When safe to do so, depart with PDX, not in the most convenient direction. When departing opposite, be a good partner and considerate of our big friends carrying passengers. Delay your departure so not to cause a TCAS-RA and avoid wake turbulence. If you are unsure, work with a qualified instructor from Aero Maintenance to better understand wake turbulence and TCAS-RA avoidance at Pearson. Here are some helpful guidelines. Wait until jets on approach to PDX 10 left or right are at your 10 o'clock position before starting the takeoff roll from runway 26. Wait until jets are abeam or directly over before starting a takeoff roll from runway 8. Additionally, do not fly over the Fort Vancouver Stockade, Smith Tower, or Esther Shore Park. Always stay below 700 feet when over the runway or extended centerline. and right traffic for runway 26. Always stay north of the river until exiting the Part 93 airspace. When departing IFR in VFR conditions, maintain a vigilant scan for aircraft entering the pattern. Always make standard radio calls for a non-towered airport, taking the runway, crosswind, downwinds, base, and final. There is a misconception that traffic must depart over Lake Vancouver. Though this is a time-honored tradition and makes sense for most operations, it is important to note that there is no regulatory obligation other than those stated in Part 93 and the Standard Code of Federal Regulations. All pilots must be vigilant to look for other aircraft when operating in non-towered airspace and practice good radio calls. Not all pilots operating in the Part 93 airspace may be familiar with local landmarks like Frito-Lay. Be precise and add distance and directions to your calls. The best techniques for arrivals from the south or east is to talk with approach and request the north bank or midfield transitions. It may be necessary to maneuver to join the pattern in standard ways as laid out by the AIM and the Flying Handbook. Use extreme caution when landing straight in runway 26. Please communicate your position and intentions. The risk of wake turbulence in TCAS RAs are much greater if vertical deviations of greater than 700 feet MSL are needed for traffic avoidance in the pattern over the extended center line of the runway. The special notice in the chart supplement and the letter to airmen suggests 3 standard visual reporting points: the confluence, Lake Vancouver, and the freeway split. Before arriving at these positions, obtain the Pearson weather and then contact Pearson Advisory. Pilots can expect Pearson Advisory to issue traffic and wake turbulence advisories and instructions to remain outside the Portland Class C airspace. Pilots can also expect to be advised of the current direction of the PDX traffic flow and should, when safe, operate in the same direction. Standard position reports should be made to Pearson Traffic.
Pearson Airfield. Automated weather observation 1745 Zulu.
Pearson Advisory, Cessna 7. November Victor on the north shore of Vancouver Lake and bound to land with 1 minute weather. 33 November Victor, Pearson Advisory, I'm outside Class Charlie airspace, crossway turbulence, Portland is departing to the west.
Aero Maintenance Flight School uses the North Practice Area, which lends itself to most arrivals from north of Lake Vancouver. Pilots must use vigilance in scanning for traffic and use the radio to communicate with other aircraft. Additionally, pilots should never be complacent by anticipating typical arrivals, as any standard arrival can be used. There is a long tradition of performing an extended base to final to runway 8 from the Lake Vancouver visual reporting point. It must be remembered this is non-standard and pilots must be vigilant to scan for traffic on the downwind. When flying downwind for runway 8, initiate standard rate turns to base that will bring you behind jets on PDX 10 left approach and 2 minutes in trail. Exercise caution for wake turbulence. It must be remembered that Pearson Field Part 93 airspace is a pie wedge. Careful and thoughtful planning should be made for arrivals, especially from the confluence to join the orderly flow of traffic. And as always, pilots should land with the flow of PDX traffic when safe to do so, and never fly higher than 700 feet MSL over the runway or extended center lines. In case of radio failure in flight, a pilot may operate an aircraft and land in the Pearson Part 93 SFRA if weather conditions are at or above basic VFR minimums. Pilots should ascertain which runway is in use and exercise extreme caution especially if Pearson is landing opposite to the PDX traffic flow. If radio failure occurs under IFR, follow the standard procedures as described in Part 91.185. Pearson is an amazing airfield, rich in history and used by proficient, passionate pilots daily. It is through our actions that we will maintain a safe and productive partnership with Portland International.
Oh, that ain't a bummer. You just lost your engine.
Oh,
You did.
what do you mean?
Just lost your engine.
Oh, really? That's sad.
Always check it, make sure. I'm always surprised that nobody wants to turn toward the airport sooner. Just assuming that they're going to make it.
Pearson traffic 5 Delta Sierra is turning base 26 Pearson. Oh, why is it?
And that airport seems far away.
Yeah. Pearson traffic 5 Delta Sierra is turning the final 26 Pearson.
Alright, you got it. Now let's see that soft field.
Soft field?
Traffic 7CC
What do you mean? I lost my engine.
over Freedom Land.
Yeah, you definitely need a soft field. You need to land at the slowest possible airspeed on an off-field landing. Keep it going, keep it going, keep it going. Oh. Nice, brother. Nice.